this is just another way to do basically a tomato sauce. And it's easier because I can just walk away and do a bunch of other things, get my meatballs made while this is cooking. And it doesn't take much either. We basically just want the tomatoes with some shallot and then thyme, fresh thyme, and just scatter that over. No big deal here in terms of what you do with it because it's really going to perfume the tomatoes. And you need a good ½ teaspoon of salt per tray. I have to admit something, and that is I've done this recipe where I've put it in before I go to bed when I stay up late and let it cook all night and wake up in the morning and it's done. I'll put the tomatoes in bigger pieces. And the only bummer that everybody reported to me when we did that night is that it is so distracting you can barely sleep. You wake up and you think you're dreaming you're living in a pizza parlor. So about a quarter cup total. I'm just going to get on top of here, and I'm using my thumb because I don't want to glug it out too much, but I want to make sure that I really have a lot of olive oil here because the juices of the tomato comes out and it mingles with that olive oil, and that's the sauce. So I've preheated the oven to 300 degrees. I really love this technique for getting your tomatoes cooked. And I have to admit that the first person who showed it to me was my son, Miles. So as I've said before, from the professor, I've come the student in many cases. All right, pop this right in the oven. It's all preheated and warm. And this is going to cook a good couple hours. And then maybe halfway through, you can switch them and put one on top and one on the bottom. So while that's going, I'm going to get the dough going. Now, I love this dough. Why? Well, it's something that's called an overnight rise in the fridge. That means I'm going to do it, put it in the fridge, and not worry about it. And if you've ever made pizza dough, you know you have to rise it and punch it down and rise it and roll it out, and I don't want any of that business right now. So I have 1 1/3 cups of warm water because we want to get our yeast proofing here. A teaspoon of sugar, which is going to feed the yeast, and then 1 package of yeast, dry yeast. It's about 2½ teaspoons total if you happen to have loose yeast at home. And I'm just going to mix this up a little bit. Okay. Now, for our dry mixture, I have 3 cups of regular all-purpose flour. And when I was first putting this recipe together, I was reading about cornmeal in this. And actually, Chicago is where the whole deep dish thing started. And I was doing a lot of research on what makes that dough the way it is. And quite a few recipes had cornmeal in. So I decided I didn't want too much cornmeal, but that I would give it a try with just a 1/4 cup of cornmeal. And you know what? It worked beautifully. So I'm going with the cornmeal. 1/4 cup of cornmeal. And 1 teaspoon salt. You need to have a little salt in your crust. Get this whisked up so I can get it into the mixer in one fell swoop. The cornmeal does this nice thing to the dough is it gives it a little bit of more texture. And I just love the way it tastes as well. A little bit of flavor too. Okay, that's ready to go. Now, if I'm lucky, this is all ready to go. It's proofed, and I would say it is. So the way we're going to do, one more thing I have to do, and this is the other thing I love about this dough, is I put olive oil in the dough, a good 1/4 cup. And it makes it so silky and beautiful. Let me just measure it directly in here so that I've got the quantity right. Yep, and it makes it so nice to roll out. It's just a beautiful, beautiful dough. All right. You know what, I'm gonna get it started. Try really hard not to make a mess. And slowly add it in thirds. So I'll put about 1/3 of the flour mixture in here now. And just let that get mixed up. I can give it a little bit of speed now without worrying about it. Okay, taking it back down so I don't have a flurry. All right, that's good. And get this incorporated. And this is my other little trick, which after a lot of experimentation I thought worked really well. I put the olive oil in here now, 1/4 cup. And let it get mixed up and really incorporate it in that dough before I put the rest of the flour in. Give it a nice whip. I love when you start smelling yeast. It just, I think it's just because when I was young and my grandmother used to let us make dough with her, and she'd give us little dough balls, and we'd get our little grimy paws on there and we'd make little shapes and she'd fry it in oil, and I just remember that so much when I smell it. Okay, so now this is mixing up well, and I'm gonna give it a good whisk, and that's about it. All right, so I'm just gonna put a little bit of olive oil on here, and ladies, I want you to just get these beautiful tomatoes on here. Just pile them on however you want.
Dig in.
Go ahead. And here, I'll give you some. Just take your hands, and if you have these long stalks, don't worry, you can just put those aside. Here, I'm gonna kind of just dump them, and you guys can arrange too.
Belle, did you try any of these tomatoes?
Yeah, have you guys tasted?
Try one, Belle. Really good.
So this is kind of a fun way to make pizza. It's not classic in the sense that you're, have a sauce and mozzarella cheese and all that stuff, but it's it's kind of like what we had growing up. My Aunt Walla used to make pizza like this all the time. Actually, now you call it focaccia, though back then we didn't call it focaccia. Now wait, one little tip about pizza making, ladies. If we get this too much too high, you know what's gonna happen? It's gonna be a little soggy, and we want it a little bit dry too. So I think this is a perfect amount. Let's just spread them out a little bit, and we have some Parmesan cheese. Pete, you wanna get some Parm on there? Just over the top, a good amount of Parm. And I'm gonna have another taste.
I think I'm gonna use these for the tomato, mozzarella, basil sandwiches I bring to school, because the tomatoes I bring to school in my sandwiches are not that good, and these look
such
delicious.
a good idea.
Really?
They look so good.
You're gonna have the best sandwiches at school.
You are. You're gonna have to, like, everybody's gonna want your sandwich, but I love the way you're thinking, because you're thinking that could go inside your sandwich. What else? You could even put
pasta.
Perfect.
Put it in
It's the pasta sauce.
Put it in pasta.
Give me 5. You are quite the cook, and you too, Belle. Your pizza making is superb.
Try one of these.
All right, listen to me here, ladies and gents. This is going into the oven right now. All right, 450 degrees. And guess what? Only for 15 minutes. And then maybe we'll let some of the other folks eat with us too.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching. Hungry for more? Click here for more great recipes. And to subscribe, click here. Check back every week for more craveable recipes, leave a comment, and tell me what you think. And don't forget, head over to our other channels for Everyday Food with Sarah Carey, Martha Stewart Weddings, and the Martha Stewart Channel.